New colony cages for chickens have been in the news recently, with some producers beginning to offer colony-laid eggs. Dunedin animal rights activist Carl Scott has opposed the cages, which producers claim meet the requirements of the Animal Welfare Act. He joins us tonight to explain why. Good evening, Carl.
Good evening, Rebecca.
Now, tell us about the phase-out of conventional cages. How did that come about?
Right, well, the campaign against conventional cages has been going a long time. It sort of hit a crunch point in 1999 with the passing of the Animal Welfare Act. Section 4C of the Act says that an animal must have the opportunity to display normal patterns of behaviour. And even the egg industry recognised battery cages don't do that, so they began this transition to a new system.
Now, the National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee developed the code behind the phase-out. What are your thoughts on that code?
I believe the code is grossly inadequate, and the reason I believe that is because they have permitted these new colony cages to become the replacement for conventional cages. So that begs the question, why has this Animal Welfare Advisory Committee allowed that to happen? And it's quite a complicated sort of story. Basically, you've got the short story as the fox in charge of the hen house. The Ministry of Primary Industries has two roles in this context. They are in charge of profits for farmers, but also welfare for animals. So whenever those two come into conflict, guess who wins? The farmers. And the National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee, the members are appointed by the Minister of Primary Industries. And we've got two accountants, an economics lecturer, people from the farming industry. We've got nobody from the SPCA, SAFE or animal behaviour experts. You can see it's loaded in favour of the farmers rather than the animals.
The government claims that colony cages are an acceptable option. Why do you think otherwise?
I've personally seen the cages. If anyone wants to see them on YouTube, type in Waikawaiti Carl Scott. I'll give you a guided tour. Now, they are slightly better than the conventional cages. Each bird has a little bit more room, slightly more than a piece of A4 paper floor space each. Now, you imagine a chicken trying to live her whole life like that. Okay, so 50 of the 60 birds in a cage, if 50 of them crowd down one end, 10 of them might get to walk around a few steps in a row without crashing into something, might get to flap their wings a bit. But surely a chicken should be able to flap her wings and walk any time she wants to, I would think so. The token additions they've added to the cage is the nesting area, basically a rubber mat on the floor with some plastic strips hanging from the ceiling, supposed to provide privacy. Well, that's not what I'd call a nesting box. They've got perches, which are slightly beneficial. It allows the hens to alleviate the pain off their feet from the wire mesh floor, but it doesn't really satisfy their needs for perching. And the scratching area, as they call it, is a sick joke. It's this piece of rubber mat, and a bird is supposed to satisfy its needs for scratching, pecking, foraging, dust bathing. You can't dust bathe on a rubber mat.
You say that the colony battery cages are nothing but an industry con job. Why do you say that?
Because they want us to believe that it does meet the requirements of the Animal Welfare Act, and quite obviously, and these cages have been condemned by SAFE, SPCA, the Green Party and international groups all over the world have condemned these cages. They do not meet the bird's instinctual behavioural needs.
What would you like consumers to do?
Well, the first thing I would say to people is don't buy cage eggs. A colony cage, conventional cage, don't buy them. I think people don't quite understand how bad life is for those birds. They are not moderately uncomfortable. Their lives are absolute hell. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been in 5 different farms now. Don't buy cage eggs. I tell people, look, if you really care about animals and you want to go an extra step, I'm vegan. I've been vegan 3.5 years. I'd recommend people give it a try. It's not as hard as people think, and it eliminates so much cruelty, you wouldn't believe it.
What would you like to see in terms of regulation for the industry?
Well, I guess the short answer for that is, I advocate for veganism, but if people are going to use animals, in the code at the moment they have best practice and minimum standard, and there's a huge gap between the two. I would like to see best practice and minimum standard be the same thing. And minimum standard needs to come up there. If people are going to use animals, they've got to have the best life possible, and that is not happening in our country. Factory farming is disgusting.
Animal rights activist Carl Scott, thanks very much for your time.